Boston College basketball comes back after a slow start and ends their 4-game winning streak, defeating Miami for their first win on the road in Coral Gables since 2010.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. This is Locked On Boston College. I'm your host, AJ Black. I'm the editor of Eagle Insider, part of the 247 Sports Network. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers join today, and you'll get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/locked on to get started. If you've been listening to this podcast, you know we're a daily BC podcast. For the last month, it's been football talk nonstop, and I needed a break. I think you probably needed a break. And we needed a basketball game. And we got a basketball game today, and one that's worth talking about, as Boston College goes ahead and defeats Miami, their second straight win against the Hurricanes, to end a 4-game losing streak. Miami is falling apart at the seams, but BC took advantage of it with a strong second half. And to talk about this game, it's been a little while, but I'm so excited. I said it yesterday. We have Beacon Street Ball to join us to talk about this game. Beak, how's it going?
It's going good, obviously getting me here in a better mood after a win. So I'm excited to sort of rehash some of what we saw tonight and look ahead and see if we can salvage any part of the season.
All right, let's start at the beginning of this game, because it started off real slow. And when you have BC looking like they did, you just were waiting for the shooter drop where, Miami was hitting some of their threes, and you were, looking for the Hurricanes to kind of just pull away. They never did, though. What did you see at the beginning of this game, with both on offense and defense for the Eagles?
Yeah, I mean, I thought going into it, and I wrote this in my wrap-up on Eagle Insider after the Pittsburgh loss this weekend. I really thought this was a prime opportunity to continue laying an egg of sorts. And I thought they came out and basically tried to, and Miami just wouldn't let them. I mean, again, BC got to 11 in about 4 minutes, which is pretty good by their standards, but then didn't get to 20 for another 11 minutes. So, took 9 or 11 minutes to score 9 points. And that's, sort of indicative of a team that, probably isn't all that connected, I would say. As you mentioned, right, Miami is about as in the dumpster as any program in the ACC. Could make an argument that right now they're lower than Louisville with the way they've been playing for the last month and a half. So, BC gets a favor there. And I thought they started, I didn't really think they were doing anything poorly, maybe some bad shot selection, but it just looked like a team moving in slow motion. It wasn't, I think a lot of things that have plagued this team over the 4-game losing streak, whether it be like really bad offensive game planning, like in terms of, where the matchups are against the opponent, or just guys absolutely forcing. That really wasn't the issue at the start. It was just, it looked like they were in third gear and just couldn't get to fourth.
Yeah, and it was Quinten Post again. Like, as much as BC has struggled in the last month, and my gosh, they have struggled. Post has, he is a guy that he puts it all out there every time they need it, and he's been playing strong. He's not done enough to win these games for them, but he was their lone offensive spark in that first half with 12 points, including that 3-pointer from way downtown at the buzzer beater. What did you see out of Post in this game?
Yeah, I mean, I think Post has played extremely well for the better part of really 2 months. I mean, he had a bit of a down game against Duke, didn't play a ton of minutes. I saw on Twitter people sort of getting on him for that. But, you look at how he's been over the last 3, and he's been excellent. He's been very efficient, which is probably his biggest strength. And hasn't really been forcing in a way that we have. I mean, if you look at his last, 3 games, 24 against Virginia, 30 obviously against Pitt, in which I thought he was excellent, probably the best game he's ever played in a BC uniform. And then tonight, finishes with I got it in front of me here somewhere. I have too many numbers on these Miami stat screens, but finishes with, help me out here,
19 points.
19 points. Thank you. Sorry about that.
No,
so three really good games in a row, and when he's playing in control and he's sort of looking for others first and letting the game come to him, it's really remarkable how good he can be. I mentioned on Twitter, I thought this was the best game he had played offensively since the St. John's game, where he was phenomenal in that game from a passing standpoint. But he just looked like a guy who was comfortable and really really did a good job of lifting his teammates up and sort of making sure that everyone was involved and I would say basically willed them to staying in it and then ultimately to victory.
So Miami, that first half was it was one of the uglier games I've seen. both.
Yeah, start to finish, it was terrible.
Yeah, just sloppy basketball. Miami looks completely disjointed, and BC hung around. You saw the score, and I think BC was down by like 12 at one point, and it looked like you were just waiting for them to kind of for the Hurricanes to run away with it. And they just kept giving BC chances to come back, and they're like, watch, like here, let's get you back into this game, and that 3-pointer that Post hit, I think, was huge because it made it a 4-point game. It made it feel going into halftime like this was a reasonable game that BC was still in, because it didn't feel like that way 10 minutes ago. And it gave a little bit of momentum in which BC fed off of into the second half.
Yeah, I mean, I was trying to look it up right here in the background. I don't know a fast way of doing it, but it just off the top of my head, it's the third time this year that they've hit a buzzer beater 3 to sort of go into half. Mason has hit 1. I think Post actually hit another.
Yep.
And yeah, it's crazy what one made hoop can sort of do for your attitude going into the half. But I completely agree with you. I mean, I think you look at it and BC should have been basically left for dead midway through or towards this start of the second half of the first half, if you will. And Miami just couldn't put him away, and credit to Post and also credit to Earl for playing him with 2 fouls. That's something I don't think he would have done earlier in the year. I think Earl knows, how important these last 2 games are for, next year, probably not for this year, but for next year, and sort of building on that momentum. And so credit to him for trusting his senior to play with the 2 fouls, and Post did a good job.
All right. In a moment, Beak and I are going to talk about that second half, and one player who in particular really stood out, but the offense explodes, and we'll look at what happened and how BC ran away with a win in Coral Gables. We'll get into that in just a moment. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more, whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. This is Locked On BC, AJ Black. And we're doing a postcast here. This is our first postcast of the year. We started doing these on the network, and I'm excited to start doing these, where we're just going to look at the games right after they happen. And Beak was available, so we were going to do one for the Hurricanes game. And we're going to now get into the second half. And Mason Matson, I think, was the real spark that got Boston College going. I mean, he hit the threes and gave the Eagles the lead. What did you see? It seemed like he really was that catalyst to get things going, right, Beak?
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, and I think that's sort of what he's been, even in the losses for this team going back about a month. I mean, I think he's really shown that he probably just deserved more shots throughout the year. And if he gets shots, eventually he's gonna, get good looks, and he's tough to close out on because he does, shoot it so quickly on the catch, and he's been knocking them down at an insane rate. Like you said, he makes 3 in what looks to be 5 possessions to sort of go from down 2 to up 6, so a 7-point swing there. And, I can't say, and I'm very biased here, but I can't say enough about, sort of what he's meant to this team down the stretch and what he meant to this team tonight, where, Post obviously is the catalyst, but credit to him and credit to Jaden Zachary. I said the same thing on Saturday. Like, those three guys have played very hard, even though, for lack of a better term, things have really come off the rails over the last couple of weeks. But, those are guys. Matson takes 14 shots tonight, as you have on the screen there. And it's obviously a lot of shots, but, I'm okay with it because most of them were good looks. If, shooters shoot, as they say. And I thought he did a really good job of staying with it. And he was engaged throughout. That's really all you can ask for from one of your seniors in a game that I think internally was viewed sort of as a must win.
Yeah, and they did. So the other piece I think that's going to be important to talk about, and we'll get into it a little bit more. One of the biggest issues with BC has been their defense this year. It's been awful. And as you can see on the screen, I put up the split box so you can see the second half. BC held Miami to 29% shooting and 25 points that second half. What did you see from the defense? What did they do, or was it more just Miami just being out of all?
Yeah, I think it might have been more just Miami. There were, the BC benefits, right? BC's biggest weakness is, in my opinion, closing out, and sort of when they do sort of close out to stop the three, they usually get blown by on the dribble drive, and then the ball rotates and it, the opponent gets another open look somewhere, a few seconds later. Benefited tonight by the fact that Miami can't really shoot it. As you can see, they're 1 for 10 from three, which, obviously when you're only making 1 out of 10, and against BC, I thought most of those were pretty decent looks for Miami. So you're benefiting there. But, I did think, if you want to give BC some credit for being active, a lot of active hands. And that's sort of the way Earl wanted to play it this year. I wrote about this, I think 2 wrap-ups ago on Eagle Insider. But, the plan sort of from the jump was, Post and McLaughlin, 2 pretty good shot alterers at the rim. And then you get Harris, Zachary, Madsen, Hand, doesn't really matter who it is. You get all these active hands on the wings, and you create a lot of turnovers, you get a lot of runouts. And I thought they did a good job of that tonight, and credit to Zachary and Harris, who I didn't think Harris guarded the ball all that well, but he did a good job of getting in the passing lanes and doubling up down low on Omir there to really create a lot of havoc, and Miami just didn't know what to do with it.
All right. Any last thoughts? Because we're going to dive into some. There's a lot of after the game where things are going. We're going to talk about in that final segment. But I want to ask you, what are your big takeaways from this win?
I mean, I think it says a lot about Earl and Post. It probably says, I said this right on Twitter after the game, probably says a little more about Post. I really did think he did a good job of, keeping the guys engaged. And you saw multiple times him sort of firing up Prince of Ligby, or, sort of coaching on the floor, which he's gotten better at, of, sort of telling guys where to be in those dead ball situations. But also Earl deserves credit. This team was basically left for dead. I mean, I really did expect to almost get blown out today and then lose close or be right in it with Louisville on Saturday, just because Louisville's so bad. But, credit to Earl. They didn't start well, but he, game plan was good. And it really, for the last, 25 minutes of the game, BC was probably, 15 or 20 points better. So credit there, and we'll see what they can do on Saturday. And I know we're going to talk about that in a second, but I'm intrigued about next week.
So I want to ask a question that I haven't had a chance to talk to you about. And going back to that defense, is the loss of TJ Bickerstaff and Mekhi Ashton Langford that big of a deal? Because it feels like
I don't think so.
It felt like they were the defensive glue to this team, but without them there, it just seems like it's a different team.
Yeah, I think it's. I don't think. I definitely don't think Mekhi is. You could probably make an argument that Bickerstaff, because of his stature, and I'd have to go back and look, but Bickerstaff, I do think is a defensive upgrade over Ligby, who started so many games this year, and maybe you could make an argument that there were some games. Duke comes to mind, and probably Carolina as well, where he definitely would have been helpful. Mekhi, very good defender, but I don't really see, other than staying in front of guys, which has been a big issue for BC this year, but not as big of an issue as, like I said earlier. Their issue is that they sag, and then the opponents rotate to a shooter somewhere in the wing or the corner, not to get too far deep into the X and O's, and then a BC wing closes out very poorly, and next thing you know, you got a layup or a wide open three. So I don't know how much Mackay helps. I really do think it was just bad scheme. I think Earl overestimated how many turnovers that this team could create, and when they weren't creating turnovers against better teams, as you saw in ACC play, they just got torched from three, and it's the reason that Louisville was in it. It's the reason Miami was up in the first half. You know, it in my opinion, it's been pretty standard about what happened, and he's obviously not going to change it now. But I expect next year, you know, him to rework that theory, because I don't think it works at this level of basketball.
All right, in a moment, there's at least 2 more games left. There could be more. Beak and I are going to talk about what the rest of the season looks like, and like where things are going to go for BC heading into the offseason. We'll get into all of that in just a moment. Fire TV is your destination for sports, from live games to highlights to in-depth analysis. Fire TV offers amazing viewing experience with smart TVs, as well as the Fire Stick, which I have at my house, that you plug into your existing TV that provides access to millions of movies and TVs episodes, as well as free and live TV. I use it for my streaming. All my shows and games I watch are all on my Fire Stick. So whether it's opening weekend of baseball or the college basketball tournament, you're going to want to have a Fire TV. Fire TV also recently created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands for all for free. That includes all of us at Locked On and most of the big pro leagues and college conferences as well. Fire TV channels let you dive into all the game analysis, highlights, and more to keep up to date on the latest in the world of March Madness, NBA, MLB, and more. So, folks, you're going to be able to check out my show on there. So check out Fire TV channels on Fire TV and Alexa devices, and check it out at www.amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. This is Locked On BC, AJ Black. And I'm just going to get a little small little plug for my website, Eagle Insider. Please come over, check that out. I've been teasing all day that there's a new recruit that's going to be committing to BC. Don't have the date, but been putting a little bit of info, and if you've been following along on Eagle Insider, you could probably put the pieces together, figure out who it is. I know who it is, but I can't tell you. We've also had some great analysis up there between BC hockey blogger covering the #1 Boston College Eagles as they get ready for the Hockey East tournament. We have Beak covering basketball, and then we just had Mitch covering Tim Lewis's defense. And man, if you want to learn football scheme, Mitch does it in a way that you're going to learn. And so come on over, check it out. He's got film, he's got diagrams. It's well worth the price of admission if you've not checked it out yet.
It was like, I'm going to just jump on the back of this. I don't read a lot of football content, especially not in March. And I had some time to kill. I was like, all right, I'll give this a read. And I couldn't believe it kept going. Like, I was like, oh, those are really good points. Like, he's probably about to ready to wrap it up. And then I would scroll down, like, he just keeps going. But it reminded me of these, like, old school, when I was in high school, I would read, I think it was Bill Barnwell would do these, like, incredibly in-depth posts on what was Grantland back in the day. And that was what it reminded me of. I was like, this is unbelievable. Like, again, most of it went over my head. I'm not going to pretend like I understood all of it. But if you are like a football junkie, it was incredible. Honest to God. Like, I left and I was like, I commented right on there. I was like, this is probably the most in-depth football article I've ever read in my entire life.
Yeah, Mitch has gone to school to be a scout, and it's very clear that he knows what he's talking about. So if you like scheme, you got to come check it out. Come over to Eagle Insider and read it, because it's well worth it. And it gives you a better feel of why they hired Tim Lewis, because this is a defensive coordinator no one knew about. And Mitch explains through scheme why he could help BC and why Bill O'Brien might be interested in bringing him here. So check that out. But plug aside, let's look at what we have left. You have Louisville. And I was just saying earlier, I follow a lot of Louisville writers. I know a lot of them, some radio hosts down there, and they are just, waiting out the clock with Kenny Payne. They're just waiting for him to get the season to end so they can fire him. And the players look that way too, because they keep showing clips, and you think BC's defense is bad. They're like walking towards guys that they're rotating towards. Just really bad basketball. So you get that, and then you have the ACC tournament. Like, what would be like a positive end to this season after all the disappointment that we've had for about the last month and a half? What would you like to see, Beak, over the last 2 weeks for BC basketball?
Yeah, I mean, I think first and foremost, you got to beat Louisville. I think even if they were to beat Louisville and then assuming they don't see Louisville again on Tuesday, and lose out there, it's obviously not positive, but it wouldn't be the worst case scenario. I have been doing a lot of looking, and I've almost talked myself into if they beat Louisville and then they can somehow make it to the quarters, that the NIT might not be out of play. And the reason I say that is that BC is going to have wins over a lot of the other teams that they're fighting with. NC State, I think, will probably be the auto. And then maybe Wake, if they don't get in, will be the other auto. And then they're all up for grabs out of the ACC. So, I don't think it's necessarily totally out of the realm of possibility. But for me, I'd like to see win on Saturday, win in the first round, and then see who you get in the second round. I think BC can beat any of those bottom. Florida State's in there, but they're not going to see Florida State. So I think they can beat any of those bottom 5 teams. And yeah, let's see what happens. I saw Post had a good quote after the game about how he's realizing, these are his last few games in college, and he's just not trying to take it for granted. And I hope that, the whole team realizes that this is their last time together, and maybe we get, a little bit of a run, sort of like we got with that Jerome team in 2017, 2018.
Yeah, you want to see Post go out on top. This is a guy that's been a lot of fun to watch, a lot of fun to cover. And he's a unique talent that when you look at BC's history, right? Like BC's been known for a lot of their guards and some of their forwards, but other than like Sean Williams before he screwed everything up, you haven't really had like a dominant center like you have with Quinten Post.
Yeah,
and to do what he does, like as we saw today with that 3-point shot, like he's a special player. So it's on one hand, it's disappointing because you didn't get to where you wanted to be. On the other hand, it's still some time left. And time is ticking, but hopefully the Eagles can figure something out there. Now, as we head to the off season, I'm not going to ask you specifics, but what are you expecting in terms of like transfer portal changes, things like that?
I think I would be very surprised if there weren't at least 2 new assistants. I think it's possible that you'll see Corey McRae back, just because I think he would just get elevated. I from what I'm told, it's not that anyone dislikes the assistants. I think there's just a view that, maybe they're not getting the guys as ready as they should be, or helping Earl as much as they should be in game. Just because, Molinari is the only guy with head coaching experience on that staff, and that was, a couple decades ago. Transfers wise, I think it's going to be more than people are expecting. I really do. Maybe they make a run here, and that's enough for Earl to convince people to stay. It seems unlikely, but I guess anything's possible. I think it's going to be a lot of transfers. And then I keep seeing everyone say, well, we got to replace Post. I don't think that will be the main goal. From what I've been told, Jaden Hastings, who was a pretty high recruit at one point, I think a top 40 guy, and then sort of stopped growing and sort of stayed at 6'9", and eventually sort of fell down the ranks, but I think ended as a 4-star. It wasn't that he wasn't ready as much as they just didn't really know what minutes he would get, and they ended up being right. Mighty has been able to hold his own. Prince probably a little worse than they were expecting. But I'm told Hastings is further along than, even McLaughlin was. So, maybe he comes in, he plays more minutes. I think Mighty has been largely fine. He's not going to be Post, obviously, but I think where you're looking is really lead guard. And I think Grant saw what he got from Zachary from day one, and understands the value of having an older and more mature guard at the point guard spot. I don't think, even if Fred Payne is ready to go, that he's going to be ready to, sort of step in after playing 30 or so minutes this year. And neither of the freshmen are going to be remotely ready to go. I have watched a lot of the Taves kid tape, and I don't see it. Maybe some people do. I doesn't mean he won't be good, but I definitely don't see him as a freshman impact player. So I think you're going to see 4 or 5 new guys, and it'll be interesting to see. I don't have a great idea of, who those guys are right now, but I don't think it's going to be, this, like, we got to get, a Post replacement. If they can find one, they're obviously going to take them. But I think lead guard and guys who can shoot it are going to be the primary goals.
That's a tough thing with college sports right now is you try to prognosticate ahead. Like when you were a college football fan or college sports fan 10 years ago, you could look at the development of a team and say, oh, this is going to be an issue. You had to wait for transfers to sit. Now, so many guys are going. Right now, it's like unfair to say like, oh, going next year, they're going to have this, this, and this, because you have no idea who's going to still be on your team.
Yeah, I mean,
or who you're bringing in.
Yeah, I think for BC too, it's interesting because I think if you had asked before the Duke game, I would have said we'd have 2 new players. And now I'd say 5 is probably the number. So I think the fall off here has really hurt Earl inside the building. And so that's also crazy too for this team, because I actually think there's a chance this team could have been better next year if everyone sort of stayed on that upwards trajectory and everyone stayed, just because the schedule is going to be so soft. I got a good idea of this. When I say it's going to be soft, I know people don't really care, but I mean, they probably should run the table till like January. And now you got so many new people, so who knows? But they'll be competitive, I think, next year. I just think it'll be a much different looking team.
All right, Beak, we're going to head on out here, wrapping up our episode as BC beats Miami, gets ready for their finale against Louisville. I can't believe the basketball season's already over. I mean, spring's right around the corner. Where can people find you on social media and find your work?
Yeah, so you can read the wrap-ups. The Miami one will be up there tomorrow over on Eagle Insider. And on Twitter, it's at Beacon ST Ball. If you just search Beacon Street Ball, thankfully nobody else has that account. So either one. And I appreciate everybody's support. And, I enjoy doing the write-ups, and I like when people comment. So I appreciate all the feedback.
And this is AJ Black. Thank you, Beak, for coming on tonight. And we'll be covering football. We just got the new schedule for practices, and the big news right now is that practices are open. This is the first time since I've been covering BC that practices are complete. Bill O'Brien's having them completely open to the media. Jeff Halfley last year made it so to the point where I didn't even bother going because it was 20 minutes at the beginning of practice and that was it. So we're going to be able to get more of an understanding of what's going on with the team, get to watch some things. I think that's really exciting. So hopefully I'll be able to get to some of those practices and give you guys some updates of what's going on there. So make sure you hit me up on Twitter at AJBlack247, on Eagle Insider, and here at Locked On BC, the only Boston College podcast that does this every single day. I feel like I have something wrong with me to talk about BC this much, but I love doing it, and I love that you all have made it part of your daily routine. Thank you so much. We'll see you all again later for another episode of Locked On BC, your team every day.